Welcome to Mr. Biz Radio, biz talk for biz owners. If you're ready to stop faking the funk and take your business onward and upward, this show is for you. And now, here's Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth.
All right, welcome to another episode of Mr. Biz Radio with me, Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth. And this week, guys, we're going to talk, we got another esteemed doctor with us this week. We're going to talk about something I talk about in my book. It's similar to what I talk about in my book, and the SMAC methodology I use, and the C in SMAC is consistent perseverance. A synonym for that essentially is resilience, right? You got to have that resilience. We're going to talk with someone who has actually recently written a book about resilience. We're going to talk about how to find your stress sweet spot. You're thinking, what the heck is that? I'm curious too. So we're going to find out about that. And then finally, we're going to talk also about Dr. Sideroff's 9 pillars of resilience. So anyone who listens or watches the show knows I talk about 3 pillars of financial success. So I'm very curious to hear about his 9 pillars of resilience. So this week, our guest, as I mentioned, is Dr. Steven Sideroff. He is a world-renowned psychologist, speaker, and professor at UCLA. His new book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, The Proven Path to Master Stress, Slow Aging, and Increase Vitality, has helped many in business achieve peak performance and success while staying physically, emotionally, and mentally strong. Dr. Sideroff, welcome to Mr. Biz Radio.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, been looking forward to this conversation. I know we talked a few months back, I think, and been looking forward to getting you on the show here because this is something, that, it really applies to anyone, obviously, but especially, the majority of our audience are entrepreneurs, business owners. And man, you have to have resilience to be able to really be successful, really in any field, frankly, but especially as, taking your lumps as a business owner and or entrepreneur. Before we start diving into that, though, Dr. Sideroff, tell us a little about your career, your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, well, I began as a research scientist in brain and behavior, really wanting to understand how the brain functions. But really, as soon as I got into that, I decided I wanted to move into more clinical work where I'm actually helping people in their lives. And as I did that, I discovered very early on that how we deal with stress is a major factor in our success and our happiness and our health. And a lot of people in the business world put health to the side. It's like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. And I want to be productive. And we have this false dichotomy that we have to choose being productive over taking time and having good health. And that probably is the most important message that I've learned in my own life, as well as in working with entrepreneurs, CEOs, other business leaders, that in fact, you get your best performance when you're also tuned in to your best health. And that really stress is something that can work for you if you handle it properly. And so that was my path. That was my journey, is to help show business people that you can be going for your goals. And at the same time, you can take care of your health as well. And so that's really the basis of my model of resilience. And I talk about it in terms of power. So my 9th pillar is power, the ability to get things done. But if you go to my book, you will see that 9th pillar sits on top of a pyramid in which the other 8 pillars underlie it, support it, and are the foundation for how we thrust out into the world to be successful. And I've found quite consistently that those people who take care of this broad range of these 9 pillars have the greatest level of success and at the same time stay healthy.
Well, it's very interesting because I agree with you 100%. And I know when I first left the corporate world and started my own business, I was guilty of it. So I had always been, I worked out a lot and I actually competed in powerlifting and things in the past. And then you start a business and it's hustle and grind, as they say. And I was neglecting, certainly much more than I had in the past. And, you know, I had a mentor tell me, he said, you know, I understand you're trying to, you know, as you mentioned, get stuff done and all that kind of stuff. And that's very important. However, what would happen to your company? What would happen to the people who work in your company? What would happen to your clients? What would happen to your family if you were in poor health and all of a sudden you couldn't work? And now the people that are relying on you, whether it be clients, your family, you know, people that work in your business, now what, right? So if you're the heart and soul of that business, and you neglect your health, and you're laid up in the hospital for, you know, some terrible reason, what's that look like for all these people that are depending on you? Like, you got to take time. Heard another guy talk about, he's a serial entrepreneur, started a whole bunch of different companies, and he said that he learned after 2 or 3 companies, and he's started a whole bunch, and several of them have failed. And he said, I figured out that I have to make time for myself every single day. He said, some people look at that and they say it's selfish. He said, I show up as a better me when I do those things, when I take the time to get a workout in, to do, you know, do things that are healthy and that make him feel good mentally. And so I think it's super important. And I've adopted some of the things that he talks about that he does in his own life, to make sure that I'm making time for that, because it's so, so important.
Well, it's not only important, but we actually perform at our best when we're resilient. Like in my book, I have this curve, and what's important to realize is that we need a certain amount of stress and activation to perform well. So at very low levels of activation and stress, our performance is low. And then as you increase the stress, performance goes up. But there's what I refer to as this sweet spot of optimal levels of stress, optimal levels of activation, and that when you push beyond that, performance and health drops off. Now, the beauty about this notion of resilience is that people who are resilient have a larger window of this sweet spot. In other words, they have their peak and extend it and can handle greater levels of stress before they get the fall off. And that's the beauty of resilience. You have a bigger stress sweet spot. And I say that the stress response is really a useful tool. However, you have to find that stress sweet spot. You want to be in that level, in that range where you're performing at your best before performance and health start to drop off.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm curious. I want to, we've only got a little bit left here in the segment, but I want to dive into the stress sweet spot a little bit. Cause again, I think when I first heard the term, I'm like, a sweet spot for stress? Like, what the heck does that mean? Like, most people say, I don't want any stress, right? But I actually resonate with what you're talking about, because I've found that oftentimes I feel like I subconsciously create stress, you know, unknowingly for myself, because I know that again, I'm not doing it on purpose, but I know that I perform well under pressure. And it's like, sometimes to get me motivated on a, you know, lethargic day, it's like I almost have to create a little bit of that stress to propel me and probably into that sweet spot. So we'll talk about that in the next segment here. We're going to hit a break, but again, Dr. Steven Sideroff is drstevensideroff.com. We'll put this in the show notes as well. Follow him on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And back after the break, we'll continue talking about the stress sweet spot.
If you would like to reach hundreds of thousands of business owners every week, Mr. Biz Radio can help. Our show airs globally 7 days a week for more than 25 hours across several internet radio stations, plus 20 plus podcast platforms. Also, video exposure on the new exclusive Mr. Biz Network streaming channel, which gets blasted to 100 plus streaming platforms, and the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, and our 350,000 social media followers multiple times every week. Join Mr. Biz Nation as an advertiser by emailing us at info@MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit getpulsetools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Check out all 3 of Mr. Biz's best-selling books at MrBizBooks.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into this, Dr. Sideroff, about this notion of a stress sweet spot. So again, as I mentioned, I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, that sounds just kind of the antithesis of what most people think of it about it. But so explain, so how do you find that? I mean, how do individuals sort of find that? Because, as you mentioned during the first segment is, you go too far and that's when things start to decline, but you need enough of it maybe to give you a little bit of a oomph, so to speak. So what's the easiest way for someone to try to find out where that is for them, in themselves individually?
Well, I like to begin with my fifth pillar of resilience, which is mental balance and mastery. It's the right mindset to create the stress sweet spot. And it's important to realize, and this is, I just finished a paper called The 4 Horsemen of Chronic Stress. And the 4 horsemen are the reasons why we wind up experiencing too much stress in our lives. Because think about it. Think about all the successes that you've had in your life, and I guarantee that all of them have been associated with stress. So our brains have put those 2 things together: stress, success. One of my early mentors, Donald Hebb, a pioneer in neuroscience, said, neurons that fire together wire together. So we've got those stress and success linked together in our brains that actually causes us to seek out stress. Now, that's not bad in and of itself, but as we are talking, we have to find the stress sweet spot. And to find the stress sweet spot, we realize that every time we activate our nervous system for stress, we are stretching the resources of our bodies. We're made to be able to do that. But to stay in the stress sweet spot, we also have to find time where we allow our bodies to recover, to create a balance between the 2 branches of our nervous system, the stress activation and the parasympathetic recovery branch. If you think about your day, we run and jump from one stress to another because we have many stimuli that trigger the stress response. But how many stimuli in your day trigger, I'm safe, I could let down my guard, I can relax? Very few, right?
Right.
So this is the mindset. How do I create balance so that when I need to thrust out for a stressful experience, I have all the resources to do it at my best? That's the key. So everybody needs to find their own rhythm. You come in to recover and then you thrust out to be a peak performer. Peak performers have this balance, create this balance. So we have the stress stimuli all around us. We need to create some stimuli. We need to create some times in our day, in our lives, where we can go inside and recover. We need to practice some form of relaxation on a daily basis to balance out the 2 branches of your nervous system. So these are some of the techniques that we need to adopt in our lives and not just be on automatic. If we go only on automatic, we will get into the stress burnout zone. We have to be conscious, mindful each day to find time, even if it's a 2-minute break after a stressful experience, where we sit back and we take a few deep, relaxing breaths. Breathing at approximately 6 breaths per minute stimulates the balance between the 2 branches of your nervous system. And take just a couple of minutes to recover, to reset, and then we're able to go back out. Now, one of the beauties of practicing a relaxation exercise is that you get better at relaxing. It's like an investment. The 5-minute, 10-minute time to practice a relaxation exercise isn't just about those 5 or 10 minutes. It's about what you're doing to train your nervous system. So every time you take just 1 or 2 minutes, you're more efficient with those 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I suppose that's why you hear a lot of people talk about, I can't remember what it is. There's a method to where I think you're supposed to work in 25-minute increments and take a 5-minute break and 25 minutes and 5-minute break. And of course, those breaks and that relaxation, everything looks different for everyone. Maybe for someone, they got to go take a walk outside, or maybe someone listens to music, maybe someone meditates. But it seems like that's kind of what you're getting at. If I'm sort of picking up what you're putting down, so to speak, is taking those breaks and making sure. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about it myself. Even if I'm not in my office outside of my house, if I'm in my home office and I'm working on a Saturday or something like that, and really cranking on something, and say, man, I got to take a break and I'm going to go in the kitchen and fill up my water or whatever it might be. What I find for myself a lot of times is, while I'm just making the short walk to the kitchen and getting water and, taking like I said, just a couple of minutes, I start to think about, man, I've just gotten a whole bunch of stuff done. Or, it almost evokes a lot of very positive things for me that give me more momentum and more, push to keep going. And, once I have that break, because that break not only rejuvenates me, but again, I start to instantly think like, man, I'm really getting a lot of stuff done. I made a lot of headway so far, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I would say that you just mentioned walking to the kitchen to get a drink of water. Mindfulness is where you stay in the moment. And so if I'm walking to the kitchen and I think, let me turn off the stress response right now and walk into the kitchen from a place of calmness, that's restoration, that's recovery. And so left to our own devices, automatically our brains will stay in the stress mode. So we have to interrupt that with a conscious decision. Okay, for the next minute, I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to relax. I'm not going to pay attention to all of the stuff that I need to do 5 minutes from now. I'm going to create this 5-minute break for myself. So it's a conscious intention of shifting out of the stress mode. Otherwise, our bodies are so conditioned to stress that we'll stay in that mode. So it's a conscious effort, mindful approach to your day, to your life.
Yeah, and I think, for me, like I said, if I'm at home, it could be something as simple as I'll go take the dog out in the backyard and throw the ball with the dog for, 5 or 10 minutes. And while I'm doing that, I'm focused on the dog. I'm focused on having fun with my dog and playing and all that stuff, completely forgetting whatever I was working on or whatever I still have to do or whatever. And what I've found, again, this is all resonating with me, Dr. Sideroff, because when I do those things, I feel like I'm very, very productive at the end of the day. And then the second of all, I'm not as like just beat down at the end of the day, right? As if I just work through and push through and continue to do that. So I definitely resonate that. We've got to hit a break here. Again, drstevensideroff.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and again, in his book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, you can find where you find most books.
How would you like to have direct access to Mr. Biz to help you run your business more profitably and more efficiently? At MrBizSolutions.com, you get live access to not only Mr. Biz, but also several of his hand-picked and trusted business experts, each with 20-plus years of experience to help you optimally manage and grow your business. That's just the start of where Mr. Biz Solutions begins. Learn more at MrBizSolutions.com. That's MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit getpulsetools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Got a question for Mr. Biz you want answered on air? Email it to info@MrBizSolutions.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. Hopefully, you've learned a little bit so far about finding that stress sweet spot, building that resilience, and learning how to take those times to relax and calm yourself, take some breaks in there. I wanted to make sure that we sort of hit a little bit of a payoff here in this last segment and talk about, if you would, Dr. Sideroff, let's walk through, you've alluded to a few of them throughout the conversation thus far, but what are your 9 pillars of resilience?
So the first 3 have to do with relationship. The first is probably the most important, your relationship with yourself, how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself. We can talk to ourselves in a way that creates stress, or we can talk to ourselves in a way that creates more balance. And I think it pays for me to say a little bit more about this first pillar. Most of us wind up being too critical, judgmental, and negative toward ourselves. We make a mistake, we beat ourselves up. A healthy relationship with yourself that immediately sends you into the direction of greater resilience is when you talk to yourself, treat yourself from an inner place of love, compassion, acceptance, support, care, and joy. So for all you people out there, you want to be more resilient, cultivate a voice, an internal voice that comes from that loving place, and say no to the critical and judgmental. Pillar 2 is our relationship with others, how we engage with other people, able to set healthy boundaries, limiting time with toxic people, spending more time with more caring and loving people. Third is relationship with something greater. This can be your spirituality, as well as having meaning and purpose in your life and giving service, something that connects you to the larger community. Okay? This is the model. My 9 pillars are a model for optimal functioning, optimal living, peak performance. The next 3 have to do with balance. The 4th pillar is physical balance and mastery. We talked about making sure you go into the recovery mode as much as possible to keep a balance, to be able to get a good night's sleep, our main source of recovery. The next is mental balance and mastery, which we went into. That's having a growth mindset and a positive mindset. Number 6 is emotional balance and mastery. That's being in tune with your feelings. That's not pushing your feelings down. If you have feelings that come up in a situation, you deal with them so that you could then let them go and you're not carrying emotional baggage. The last 3 have to do with how we engage in the world. Number 7 is presence. Am I aware of what's going on around me, tuned into my present world, or am I up in my head thinking about what happened yesterday or worrying about tomorrow? The more we're in the present moment, the more we have success. Number 8 is flexibility. Can I be flexible and make adjustments because the world is always handing obstacles to us? Can I adjust so that I'm more likely to reach my goals? Can I change my goals based on circumstances so that I'm more likely to be successful? Can I be flexible with my perspective? Can I put myself in some other person's shoes so I see a situation from a different perspective and have greater chances of success? And finally, the 9th pillar I call power, the ability to get things done. And this is having focus, concentration. It's being persistent and consistent so that I reach my goals. So many of the times we work hard, but we don't take the final steps to get the closure, to get the results, to get the rewards. It's being focused, and it's having the courage not to not that you don't have fear, but it's have the courage to overcome your fear to take action. That's the model that includes everything important in living your best life and getting the true success with health and happiness as well.
Well, I love the fact that your first pillar is the relationship you have with yourself, and I think that's one that gets often overlooked. I know I've been guilty of it myself, the self-talk. And as you mentioned, beating yourself up. I make a mistake and I'm like, talking to myself, like, why the heck did you do that? That was just a dumb mistake, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of, really, I'm much more mindful of it now, of turning that situation around. Like, if I make a bad mistake, say, well, almost even with humor for me is like, oh, well, I know one way that won't work. Okay, so let's try another one. Instead of dwelling on the fact that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, or I didn't get this done, or whatever it might be. Because I had someone who worked for me at one point that he used self-deprecating humor, and he was a very gifted person, very, very intelligent person. And I was coaching him, and I said, I think you're actually holding yourself back because of your self-deprecating humor that you use. And I said, I can't imagine what you would tell yourself, right? If you're doing that, to everyone else, I can't imagine what you say to yourself, right? And I said, you really have to watch that. I mean, your comments are very funny, but I feel like you're kind of holding yourself back with that sort of self-talk, and maybe not having a great relationship with himself because he, was putting so much pressure on himself to succeed in his job.
Right. And, acceptance. First of all, in life, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do the wrong thing. It's so important to be accepting of yourself. Otherwise, you keep putting yourself down and undermining yourself. And so I like to say that we can only be in one place at a time. And if we're here, in our path, in our journey, we can't be here. But most of the time, we feel I should be here, even though we're here. I should have done that better. I shouldn't have made that mistake. And the quickest way to get to where you want to get to is by starting by accepting where you're at now. Not that you love or like where you're at now, but simply, this is where I'm at now. I want to get better. I want to be more focused. But right now, here's where I'm at. I have to accept myself to make the greatest progress toward where I want to get to. That's a very important concept. One of the things that I talk about in my book is that we get overwhelmed by all the things we feel we need to be doing to get better. And I talk about the path in my book, which is alongside of us every moment of every day. And so today, the goal is not what's all the ways down the road. The goal is, how do I get onto the path right now, today? And in my book, I give people step-by-steps to take to get onto the path every day. And once you're on the path, you can breathe a sigh of relief. I'm doing what I need to be doing today to get to the ultimate goals, but I can find those goals today by doing just a few steps along the way.
I found myself, another one of your pillars you mentioned was awareness. And I found myself, this was probably about 10 or 12 years ago, that I was doing some self-reflection, and I found that the majority of my thoughts were either, as you mentioned, I was either thinking about what happened yesterday, last week, last month, or I was concerned about what might happen in the future. Mm-hmm. And I had to really rein myself in. And I literally created an acronym to remind myself, and it's be in the moment. So BITM. So I would remind myself when I started to drift one way or the other, just say, I would tell myself, BITM, be in the moment, be in this moment right now. Don't worry about this. That might never happen. Don't worry about that, et cetera. Fascinating conversation, Dr. Sideroff. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. And drstephensideroff.com. And my book is available everywhere where you purchase books, The 9 Pillars of Resilience.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And don't forget, as always,
To become part of Mr. Biz Nation, follow him on all social media platforms or never miss a show by going to MrBizRadio.com. If you prefer free video content, visit the Mr. Biz YouTube channel or check out his streaming channel, which is available on 100 plus streaming platforms at MrBizNetwork.com.